our city council work session agenda item. To start with, it is a long agenda because we have backed up two things for two canceled city councils. One of them because a couple things weren't quite prepared, another one because there was only two council persons who could have been here. And that would have been a good night. So we have sent out to the council the entire, all of the information. It's always available on the state website, which you can get a link to from the city's website. And so the council should have had a chance to look through here. And I'm going to go through things quite quickly. And if there are things that need to be discussed that the council wants to bring forward, that's kind of the way we'd like to do it. So we're going to start first of all with the agenda format change, and that's just simply this. Instead of asking the council to report on those areas of their assignments, that's more of an administrative responsibility anyway. And so what we're going to do is ask each of the department heads to make those reports and then encourage the council to be in touch with those members of our city staff that you have concerns for, and we'll bring those things together ahead of time. And then, of course, as there's discussion and questions as they make those presentations. So that is what the format change is going to be. And I think it will be more efficient, and I think it's more appropriate with the way this city government is supposed to work anyway. Next, we're going to turn the time over to Chief Wade. We've asked him some months ago, would he give us a report of the fire and EMS for our city?
First of all, thanks, Mayor, for letting me, well, it wasn't really letting me, it was you being here. On those volunteer.
Demanding.
It's totally fine, no, it's fine.
Mandatory.
Yeah, mandatory, exactly. Since the purchase of the ambulance, I've taken a little bit of a beating on social media about that, and which is no problem. I think some of those folks need to come to council meeting from time to time so they really know what's going on. But ever since I was appointed as the fire chief many years ago, probably about 18 years ago or whatever, everything I've tried to do has been to improve emergency services for the city, for the people, for everybody. Any people running in and out of our city or just coming through to travel. And so one of those first major milestones that I did was actually get the city rated through ISO, which that immediately dropped insurance rates for everybody by about half. And that was done back in 93, I think 95, something like that. So ever since then, next slide. Ever since then, I've been goal oriented, and these are the goals. I think you've all seen this. It's been emailed out. The milestones that we have in our first 15 years that I've been in the fire department and as the chief is our new engine. I don't know if those of you that remember before, we had a lot of old derelict stuff that just kept really killing us for money. We also implemented our first responder unit, and we now, into that 15 years, we now have a station remodeled. So that's been one of our goals for a long time. So I appreciate all the support in the council over the past couple of years to make that happen. It's really been a big boon to the city. Moving on, next slide. Moving on, over for the next 10 years, these are a list of things that I would like to also get accomplished for the city. Now, many of these are going to take a lot less than 10 years, and I hope to have probably the first half of this list done within the first year. But there's going to be some additional things that are going to happen over time. A milestone on this list is basic ambulance service started. We know that medical and emergency services are here to stay. We have a choice of how we're going to pay for that, and it makes sense to have us do it as a city versus not, because the costs more than triple the other way. Our growth benefit, if we maintain our ISO, maintain where we're currently at, which we are still a 5 after our rating this last summer, we're able to keep our insurance rates basically low. If we were to drop that and go away from that, insurance rates on every individual in the city and every homeowner would double. The ambulance transport costs, currently, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to take an ambulance ride down to the hospital. It runs between $1,600 and $1,800 a trip. So that's a pretty good expense for a 40-minute round trip ride. With the fire department being able to provide that, we can actually cut that cost to around $900. And that's just a city recommendation, but we can kind of set the rates as we want. Even, yes,
What's
go
the
ahead.
going insurance, health insurance rate they pay? Because even if you charge
That's- you're right.
1,800, what does insurance actually pay? And I know it varies,
That varies.
it
does.
varies per insurance, but do you know what the average is?
I do not know. I know that right now they are talking about you collect about 60% of what you bill. Now, that is an estimate at best, and the part of that is the estimates that I've received those information numbers from have not been from people that have actually been, or had a medical service billing for them. So that increases your ability to collect more back on those ambulance rates as well. So hopefully that will, offset some of that. But if with 60% of that, if you're collecting that, you're gonna collect $600 per call. All right. The ambulance revenue, with projected last year, we ran about 35 calls that were ambulance related. It could account for 20 to 25% of the fire department budget. So that could be a positive for the future with that. Next slide. The projected growth and projected things for the fire department, with the growth of the city, with the size of buildings we're gonna have coming in, with the number of homes we've got coming in, we're gonna come to a point where we're gonna go across the line of needing a second engine. That's just natural to maintain our ISO rating. The cost for a new engine is another $750,000 plus outfitting it if you go new. Now, it doesn't cost that much. I went worst case scenario on this.
So Seth, I have a
yes,
question on
Go
that.
ahead.
At what point are we required to get a new engine?
That's what I've got to go determine where we're at. We were told when we did our ISO rating this last summer that we were right borderline now. So with we could have gone across with the increase of the assisted living center already, with the increase in size. I don't know. I know with another church, we're probably going to be in that boat as well. With a school, we're definitely going to go over. With the number of homes that are going to be going in, we're going to be crossing that line. And I would hate to have us get behind. That's going to change ratings as we go down the road if we don't prepare for that.
Right. Well, that's why I'd like to know exactly like house numbers or
Sure.
size of building, exactly where we're at, so we know how much development can happen before we as a city have to incur this bill.
Okay, I can get that information and get back with you on that, and I'm happy to do that.
That'd be great.
All
Thank
right,
you.
you bet. With the budget increase for the fire department, if we can plan for that, that helps us put money aside in capital projects. And that's how we've been able to keep up with things in the past, is through that savings plan. We'll put a dollar amount away every year, and over time, pay for things. That's how we were able to buy the ambulance, is through that program. We still have money saved, we still have money set aside to do other things with the department that's gonna benefit the city the most. And these things are just so we can keep up. So, I mean, if we were to stay right where we're at right now, we're gonna fall behind really quickly. So it's something we really need to look at citywide to keep where we're at. Next slide. The next one is the projected growth. I'm basically talking about the revenue here, which we kind of talked about a couple minutes ago. With the using of a billing service, that helps us also with our collection rates. So hopefully that will be able to get that up a little higher than 60%. And a lot of that also is like the Medicaid piece comes into play. There's a whole bunch of different factors. And when I contacted these outside companies, they actually recommend to do that because they do it every day. They know all the rules. We don't have to train additional personnel to do that. And other departments that I've talked to have actually taken their people off the payroll and transferred all their stuff to these billing facilities so that they don't have to worry about it. And they're able to keep up with it a lot quicker than having somebody that just does it once or twice a month or once a week. So it works out really well. Our call volume is increasing. I mean, we ran about 55 calls last year, 35 of those roughly medical. The rest were fire-related calls, whether fire or alarms, stuff like that. So it's increasing, and just with the number of homes, it's going to go up as well as that continues to grow. We just need to remember that emergency services are part of our lives now. It's the way it is. It's a necessary evil, if you want to call it that. Just our society, the way we are, the way people want to demand the 911 and somebody to show up. We can pay for it as a city and keep the cost low by having a department, or we cannot. It's up to us. We're going to pay the cost one way or the other. It's how we want to keep that cost low. And as we organize and just plan for the future, we're going to be able to stay ahead of that and keep it as low as we possibly can with what we've got to go. Any questions?
No, just a compliment, well done, and you've done an exceptional job. I think if we, as you're getting information together, one thing that I think we would need to get is see, so for our own information, see what the difference is between an ISO 5 and an ISO 4 or whatever it would change to. There, 5's probably.
By chance, no one else around the top of your head where you're doing?
I ran the figures on my own house. If I went from a 5 to a 6, which is like the next level up, it would almost double my rate.
It would reduce your rate.
No, if you
From
go
a
from,
five-
if you go from a 5 to a 6,
Oh,
it'll
five
The higher
to
the
six.
number, the lower the
The
service.
lower, okay.
And
So
you-
it advises.
Nine being no services at all, 5 being middle of the road. I don't think we can
Okay.
actually get any better than 5 because we don't have any commercial business
Yeah,
to speak of.
yeah.
And we don't have a lot of large buildings that would require additional trucks and stuff like that. So I don't know about actually getting to 4. I was told by the ISO rep that we probably would never be able to get to a 4,
Okay.
just because of our situation, the community that we have.
And so it's a 6.
Yeah, well, right now we're at a 5, but I've never seen a city of our size
That
below a
wasn't
5.
a
5 is as good as you're gonna get unless we have full-time ladder trucks.
Right. There's a lot of different
Lots of
factors
things
that we
that
would
we
never
have.
meet.
I know that makes a huge difference on the premium,
Yeah.
and everybody will be concerned with that. You know, when you pay $700, $800, $1,000 a year, you know,
Yeah.
if you double
Yes.
that.
Brian?
Seth, what is the plan for the ambulance? How soon is that gonna go?
It's in, well, we can't transport, we're using it now and have been for the last couple, I think 2.5 months now.
Yeah.
We run multiple calls in it, we use it right now to get our people to the call. It's out there visible in the community, it's
But
going.
you can't
We
transport.
just can't transport, that's an additional
Yeah,
license.
That's what I'm asking.
We need additional people. We're doing a big recruiting push right now. We've had 3 people join the department in the last 2 months,
EMTs.
month and a half. 3 of those, actually 4 people, sorry, and 3 of those are EMTs. But we've got to get them trained. And the next class starts in January. And so we've got to get those people through school, get them licensed and get it all going.
So what's the plan in terms of, what do you foresee is the date this goes online, where you can transport?
Well, I would suspect we're gonna need probably 8 or 9 more people, but it's the daytime coverage that's gonna hurt. That's the critical piece, because we've gotta be able to cover 24/7, and to run an ambulance, we have to have 2 people, a driver and an EMT with the patient. Now, that's 24/7, and the state also wants us to show that we can have some redundancy in that in case we have some problems. So we've got to be able to show to the state, even to get a license, that we have enough personnel to manage that and to man that vehicle for what service we're trying to provide to our city. So that, right now, it's the people. If I had the people right now, it would just be a training issue, getting them all up a license, and we could probably apply for the license within a few months.
So best guess, what are we talking, 2 years?
No, I would hope to be transporting by this time next year, or maybe even sooner. It depends on how quick we can get people here. Yes.
So just a question, how many personnel would you have right now, do you think, that could man that on a
Well,
24-hour?
We're talking to alter our fire department policy and allow drivers to be on the department. Drivers they would be CPR certified because they have to be in an ambulance, at least CPR certified. And they would just be a driver, so it not necessarily would be a fire department member or a firefighter,
Yeah.
but we would have an EMT, which we're already covering, and another driver that could help cover that. And so the additional personnel, you know, it's my daytime help. I mean, I got plenty of help from 4 PM
Yeah.
to 7 in the morning. But
So,
from about 7
Some
to
retired
4,
people or
Yeah, that'd be-
something, so you need,
sign up.
yeah,
Yes,
I'll
Seth.
drive the ambulance, yeah.
Right
Yes.
now, I make the schedule for the EMTs.
Yeah.
Right now, we can cover 1 person on call 24/7. Our biggest problem is our days and our Saturdays. Right now, I've got 3 people that can take day shifts.
3.
3.
That's from
That's-
7 to 7
Yeah.
daily, and that's, when you run those, that's 28
There are
to 30
some
days a month.
weeks I am on call 3 to 4 days a week, just because that's all there
Nobody
is.
else.
That's just
City.
me, that's just me. We need people to volunteer. We can't force people to volunteer. If we had a ton of people that came on right now and said we could do it, that's great. But a lot of people are scared off because of the time commitment that is involved. It does take time and a lot of time, but it's something that I feel is worth it. I don't know how many of you have had us respond to your homes or your families. I know that EMTs have responded on my daughter before. And just that one time makes it all worth it. I would be on call every day if I could, but unfortunately I have to go grocery shopping and. Yeah.
The more volunteers,
Because,
the
yeah,
less-
when you are on call, you
Yeah.
have to stay in the city.
Yeah.
So we can do laundry or whatever, but we have to be able to be in the city and respond to the station within 3 minutes. So that's where we're at. We need more people that are available
So you see her
during
driving
the day.
fast, give her slack.
Well, she's usually meeting us on the calls, so she's usually on the calls with
Of
us.
those four.
That's where we're at right now.
Of those four that have signed out, that our Public Works employee,
No.
because he is interested in doing that, and I will make it so
That
that
would greatly help.
he's
absolutely.
here 24/7, unless there would be a major reason why he couldn't leave the city
Sure.
temporarily.
Sure.
He would be available, and he's interested in doing that.
And we've, now not, well, I don't want to be derogatory at all, but we've had that situation in the past.
It's tough.
And it's tough because the city employees are here all day. They don't want to come back for training at night. And if they're not at training, I gotta let you go from the department because we have an attendance policy and we have reasons why we have training. I mean, I can't just pull people off the street, put them in turnout gear and an SCBA and say, yeah, go put that fire out. It
Yes.
doesn't work that way. Or go do CPR on that individual who's dying. We've got to have the proper training, and that's what training is for. And so if they're willing to come to training, great. We'd love to have
He's
them.
aware of that, and he does live in town. He's, of the
Sure.
three, he does live in town, real close. He could run across the street in 3 minutes, I think,
We-
so,
We'd love to have them, but here again, like Heather was saying, we're not going to force people.
no.
Because it's, I mean, it's do the best you can. And those people that serve, I know Heather tells me all the time, she feels that she's making a difference. I mean, I feel that I'm making a difference. And so it takes a bit to get to that point where you're seeing some of that, but it does happen. And you can make a difference as a volunteer.
I'm aware of a few other individuals who are interested, and I pushed them, and I mentioned, I think it was with Linda actually, when we were out of town and we were talking. I'm willing to go door to door talking to people.
We already have the flyer set up there.
We're very happy to do that, if you'd like to go there.
Yep, we're happy to do that.
Okay.
And we've got them out here on the bulletin board as well.
Appreciate that.
You bet.
Good
Any
job.
other questions, comments? Thank you, Seth and Heather. We really appreciate not only your service, but you being here tonight to represent this part of the city's response service. Thank you. Okay, we are going to items number 3 through 8. All have to do with developments, et cetera, going on in the city. I hope you've had a chance to look over them. Normally Shay would start and go through each one, but several of these things we've gone over several times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this first one. It says the senior overlay zone change request. Recommendation from Planning Commission. It came from the Planning Commission. We have had 2 or 3 different meetings already with the developer and the Planning Commission. It has been recommended to the City Council. Let's start, first of all, Shady, would you like to just give a real brief overview, and then let's just see if the council has questions or comments.
Okay, so what you're doing tonight is this, I should say, first of all, this is the parcel that's just east of Schuler Park right here, between that and Elk Ridge Drive. And what you're doing tonight is considering whether to apply a senior overlay zone. So this isn't a preliminary review. What you're seeing on the screen right now is just is really rough conceptual of what may or may not happen with it, but you're just asking yourselves, would a senior housing project, is it desirable, would it fit in the community? in this location. This particular parcel is 15.46 acres. It's currently zoned as R1 15,000. If this were approved and they were to move forward on this, their proposal is 60 units, which basically is a quarter of an acre per dwelling, so, or 4 dwellings per acre. Actually, it's just slightly less than that, 3.96, but basically 4 dwellings per acre in density. So that'd be similar to R1 12,000. And that's all per code. The one thing that is being requested with this that is an exception, and we did the same thing with Elk Ridge Meadows, phases 5 through 10. The way the PUD ordinance and the way these overlay zones are written, we basically stayed in there that they can work on a maximum of 6 acres and 24 units. The problem with that is first of all, we're asking, or if we approve this, we're granting higher density, which means that we're going to use more sewer, we're going to use more water. You know, there's utility issues tied in with this. As the city engineer looks at this, as Cody, your public works, looks at this, and as I, the planner, look at this, I would like to see the whole project initially at the preliminary level of what all this property is going to be built out at. I'd like to know that it's going to be 60 units so that I can look at what are the issues with utilities going to be. Do we need to upsize sewer to make this work? Do we need to provide special provisions with water or something like that? If all I can see is one little portion of this, knowing that they're going to come back later on, put in another request for another portion, and then another one, or however that splits out, we can't, we're not making good choices, and good decisions off of just small pieces of it. So I ask that you would, if you grant this, that you'd also grant the exception that they can turn in conceptual for the 15.46 acres and the 60 units. And then, they may turn final in as phases, however they want to do that, but we consider the whole project.
Okay.
Okay, I had a couple concerns regarding this. I actually like seeing the whole project presented at
Yeah,
once instead
me
of
too.
in sections, and then if you put it in phases, it's fine. First concern is the increased density. It's currently rated on our master plan as an R15 zone, and we'd take it down to an R12, which is from third acre lots down to quarter acre lots. So I think we need to stick with our master plan. If they want to do senior housing there, make them comply with the density of third acre lots, units.
Then we need to change our code, because our code allows in R1 15,000 and R1 12,000, the quarter acre lots for senior housing.
Yeah, for senior housing, that's what I'm saying, but this is not currently zoned senior housing.
No, I'm just saying.
So what I'm saying is the current zoning code on this, which in accordance to our master plan, is a house per every third acre. Okay, so,
Can I just, no.
that's one concern I have. Second concern, their proposal just says the need for emergency services within these communities is no greater than the aging population already living within the community. You add 60 units that can only be 55 plus, you're gonna increase the need for emergency services. There's no doubt about it. We just heard from our fire chief, Seth Waite, on our ISO rating. That's a concern because that may immediately increase a bill to the city if we have to have a new fire truck. Another issue that I have, it's got a private drive in there. I think private drives are terrible ideas. I mean, this happened out in Saratoga Springs. They put in something like this. They put in a private drive. The streets are smaller. The HOA went defunct. Now the residents want the city to come take care of the street, right? But the city can't get their equipment in there because the streets aren't big enough. I think private drives are a major issue and we should not allow those in our city. It's great if the HOA maintains itself forever, but as we've already seen in our city, we've had problems with HOAs. They're not maintained well. I think that's a big issue, making it a private drive, especially on the thing, the private drive connects to Park Drive. So you're gonna have onto the main road, people wanting to pull into that complex, but then they're gonna be on a private street. That's, I don't know, I think there's quite a few issues with this whole project, and those are my concerns.
Yeah, Jim and I had discussed that, he's been involved in that, and he did have that concern about the private drive as a part of this, and his recommendation, and I think it is true. See, one of those, the main drag coming down on Hillside Drive is a city street, you know, already, and so you just have that loop, and if that was required to be built to the 32-foot, which is the city residential street width, and dedicated to the city, you would still have them maintaining their parks and open spaces and stuff. But I think that would address that, and I think it would be better for the city. You know, that is something that it's been discussed. As far as that density, rather than just having a bunch of streets across there and regular homes, I think they are. I don't know what the size of the open space in the middle is, but that is I think a positive consideration in my mind to have this overlay of the senior. You're not just having that many, you know, third acres, but I'll bet you would have more houses on there than just third acres, and you'd have them develop, you know, they're developing off of that main road still. But I think that, you know, that's a legitimate concern that you bring up, but I think that somewhat addresses that, because they do have a fairly large open space in there. And then you've got, you know, these just by the nature of them, you know, this is not, you have twin homes together, they're not taking up yards, you know, like just residents would be. But I personally think that fits well in that area that's close to the, like it was laid out, you know, in the presentation. I was at the planning commission to just see what their thinking was when that was presented. And I think most, you know, all of those, I didn't hear any negatives about it not fitting well and not being an attractive addition, you know, to the city. And so I personally would be in favor of looking at that. I was just asking Shay, okay, where do we set up the requirements though? Tonight, I guess, we are just deciding whether to approve this as a rating, change the rating on it so that they could have an overlay. So, okay, where does that, where do we decide where, if there's a curb and gutter sidewalk that goes around this whole thing, if there's any fences going in, if there's, you know, some of those things, he was saying, you know, in the initial plan, those things would be worked out there. And I think, you know, I'd definitely like to, you know, have some input there, or I think we should have some input there.
Right.
I'm concerned that our city plan is out of sync with the codes. Why did the codes approved if they're not?
Is out of sync with the codes? I guess I'm trying to understand where you're coming from with that. All I'm saying is that if you apply the senior overlay, the quarter acre lots or 4 units per acre is allowed as part of that senior overlay. And the general plan is consistent with that. There's only 2 zones that the senior overlay can be applied in, and that's the R1 12,000 and the R1 15,000. So the R1 12,000 is already quarter acre lots. We don't really have any of that anymore. That was all, the Elk Ridge Meadows development is the only area that's zoned for that. So it's R1 15,000 is really.
I think Brian, is Brian talking about the 24, oh yeah, sorry.
That's okay. We'll give you the
Yeah,
chance.
it's my bad.
The thing I'm concerned about is that why would we have to change the code to meet the long-range plan for the city.
Well, all I'm
Long-range
saying
plan
is,
should be in sync with that.
all I'm saying is if you apply the overlay and then turn around and say that it has to meet the density in the underlying zone, so the third acre lots, then we need to modify that overlay, we need to modify that code, because the code specifically states that if that zone is applied, that senior housing overlay is applied, that they can have 4 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, but what does the long-range plan state?
The long-range plan supports senior housing.
Not my question is, what does it state? Does it state that we can go down to the 1/4 acre, or does it state that we stay a little further?
The plan doesn't specify, the long-range plan doesn't specify.
It permits.
It permits it, but it doesn't specify, that's in the code, that's not in the general plan. The general plan states that we support senior housing, and that's why we've created, why the city created that overlay zone, was to support that
Well, that's a broad
option.
statement though, but senior housing with caveats. We're saying now that senior housing is gonna increase the density, the lot size and so forth. I think we're rushing in on something here before we really take a look at what we agreed to some years ago in terms of the long-range plan for the city.
Okay, so just a couple of things here. This is in the R115,000 zone right now.
Correct.
When the senior housing overlay code was put into place 7, 8 years ago, there were 2 different senior housing overlay zones created, where you could go and you could apply the R12 and the R15, the R12. The intent, as I remember it, was if you're in the R12, then you can have the R12 senior housing version. You can't take the R12 and plug it into the R15 or vice versa. That was the intent. If our code doesn't say that, that's what we need to fix first. Second, the private road, I'm looking at that. We have a hard time responding in a fire truck down in the PUD now. When people park on the street, we had a call down there where there was a kid that was lost a couple weeks ago. We had a hard time getting our truck in there just because people were parked on the street there. I can't even imagine what it would be like if there's any parking on the street, on a private drive. So if you're gonna have a private drive, it better be as wide as it would be if there were cars lining both sides and you could still have 2 cars pass with no parking. I don't think that that's unreasonable. Next item, typically the reason that this code was put into place was to allow a place for people who love our community, who are a great part of our community, a way to stay in our community instead of having to move to Spanish Fork or Payson or somewhere else because they can't handle removing the snow, maintaining the yards. That's what this is designed to do. It's allowed to allow people who are in their later years an opportunity to stay and remain a viable part of our community, and that is a great thing. I think we need to have that. But I'm looking at this because we've got another area where a overlay was approved. There's actually 2. There's one that's right across the street that's on the corner of Park Drive and Elk Ridge Drive. So like right across the street from part of that. The other one is up further on Elk Ridge Drive, where one of the old golf course holes is, that was also approved, and zoned that with that senior housing overlay. And I think we're getting the cart before the horse here. Clearly we've got a disconnect between our code if they're able to take and plug an R12 into an R15 zone, because that was never the intent. We asked, and I believe that the Planning Commission is currently working on taking the PUD and some of these extra things out, because quite frankly we don't need them anymore. They serve their purpose. They allowed for the density, they allowed for the income requirements that we have to meet with the state so we can continue to operate as a city and not get slapped with fines and fees and regs. And that's been done. That's water under the bridge. So those are the issues that I see right now.
Anyone else? I'll invite the developer to share your concerns and insights if you'd like to.
That's fine, I hate to take up your work session time.
No, that's
Get all
okay, that's
that
what
way.
this is about.
Okay, I mean, no, I think they're all viable concerns. Many of them, I mean, I'm sure we can work something out on. We think that this is gonna be a great asset for the community. This is, in our opinion, we think it's the highest and best use for this piece of property. Like Shay said, meets the zone 100%. We come in just a hair under the maximum density which is allowed, which is 4 units per acre. Just the density issues, on paper, you know, it may look like the quarter acre lot multiple's been applied, but I think once you see this come to fruition, it'll feel a lot less dense than a traditional single-family development would. Mainly just because these are all going to be single-story homes. We anticipate a basement, assuming no geologic issues, which I don't think there are. But it'll feel much less dense, and it's a smaller footprint overall with the building, the twin homes. So I think overall it will feel very low density, which is consistent with just the surrounding areas, I think. Again, meets the plan, meets the general plan, meets the current city code. And the main reason why we're choosing this area for the senior homes, at the end of the day, is just that we know that there are residents, you know, that are already living here, that, like you mentioned, they want to stay here. There are also other residents that would like to move down here. With the addition, the opening of the Payson Temple, we've got excellent medical services nearby, and also here, y'all are expanding your local services. We think there will be, you know, there'll be less of a need from the residents to feel pressured to move closer to town, closer to Provo, to Orem, so that they can do the things they want to do as they approach retirement. And one thing, an additional thing to keep in mind too is, even though this is a quote-unquote senior housing development, these are still very active adults. They will not be requiring, you know, significant amount of medical care and attention. They will be, this will be an active community. I think they're going to be going daily across the street to golf. They're going to be spending money here in the community. These are people that statistically, you know, when you look at the marketing information, they have significant disposable income. And we think that an HOA providing a low maintenance habitat for an active senior community would fit perfectly in Elkridge. We were very pleased to see the zone, the way the code's the way it is written, to accommodate this growing demographic, because it is. I don't have to tell y'all, you turn it on all the time. We all know the baby boomers. My parents, I'm from Alabama. They've expressed interest. They want to relocate here, closer to some of their kids and their grandbabies. And they've even asked. They're like, "Let me know the price point. Let me know what's going on, how it's coming." And I can't tell you how many people that we've met in and around this community that are excited to hear about this. I was telling this gentleman, we just had a baby at Orem Community, and our nurse and her daughter live in Elkridge, and she wants to bring her parents up from St. George. You know, and she heard about this, and she was asking us all about it at the hospital. So, I mean, even with no marketing effort whatsoever, there's a buzz already from people that want to either want to continue to be a part of Elkridge, but they don't want the 3,000 to 4,000 square foot home anymore. They want to downsize. They want to be able to go out of town for maybe an extended period of time and not have to worry about keeping up the yard. So that's basically where we're coming from.
And just state your name for.
Brent Skipper from Lehigh,
Thanks, Brent.
Utah.
Any other discussion from the council? We'll turn it to open forum in a little while, so those
Sure.
of you who are still wanting to express your opinion, we'll get to that. I'm sorry it's going to be a little while, but it'll come to an open forum session and then we can do that.
Okay.
Anything else, Shay? Okay, let's go to the next one. Harrison Heights Phase 4 lot line adjustment discussion for lot 23. Is there any discussion from the council, concerns? This has been an issue we have reviewed in the past.
I was just curious to see which one is this. This is the one that I have a question on. Where are we adjusting the lot line on this one?
So
Just this one.
yeah, so we've got it up right here. So lot 23 is right over on the left-hand side, and basically, what's occurred is with the design of the roundabout, the final design of the roundabout, it ended up being a little wider than it was initially thought it would occur.
The roundabout?
The roundabout.
The path sidewalk.
And so with the sidewalk and that, so anyway, with that being a little bit larger, in order to maintain our code of the minimum of 20,000 square feet, the adjustment was going to be to the back of the lot, adding, is it, I want to say like 3 feet? Or- So to the back of the lot, and then also just
No, I-
slightly off to the
So,
side.
actually, no, so these were so it's only the side adjustment. But the problem that happened, so there was 2 options we could go, you go to the back, but the problem is
Then
I don't
we'll
own the
need-
back yet, and that's down the road. I own both the side, and so it's like it's like it starts at 3 feet, goes to 0. It's just enough to, a little clip of the corner, it expands that enough to get back to the 20,000 foot minimum that it was before, but after the roundabout design, it shrunk below.
Any other
It's kind of
questions?
a trade of, I mean, the city, that'll end up being dedicated to the city later anyway, so I think it all works out.
No more discussion, let's move to the next one. Harrison Heights Phase 7, final plat approval. Again, we've been over through this quite a bit. Jay, if you'll give them a quick overview.
It's right there.
Kill that one.
That's not phase 7.
That's not it, no.
Okay. Don't freak out. I'm
Okay.
not asking for more density.
Why did that just go down? Hang on.
This week.
Okay. So,
You learned well.
Harrison Heights Phase 7, this is the extension of Chrisley Lane. Chrisley Lane with Phase 5 went down to Skyhawk Way and ties in with Skyhawk Way. As part of that Phase 5 project, the sewer that was in the back of Elk Ridge Meadows Phase 2 in the backyards down through there, was a new sewer line was being built and relocated along Chrisley Lane all the way down to the main road. So this basically, Harrison Heights Phase 7 extends Chrisley Lane down from Skyhawk Way down to Armstrong Drive, which is in the Traditions or Doe Hill subdivision. And so that will tie that street in. So from the Doe Hill development, they'll have an easy connection onto Skyhawk Way and up into the community from that side, not having to all travel across Rocky Mountain Way. So there's 8 lots involved with this. It's beneficial in that it ties in the sewer from Armstrong into this new trunk line that's being connected down there. It also is going to tie the water in down there, which ties some of those subdivisions, gives us a little better fire flow down on the lower end because we've got multiple lines connecting for water.
Dale?
Is the bottom end of that connecting to 11200? Is that the one that's going clear through?
The
No,
next,
well,
that'll be phase 9 later
the
on.
next phase
Oh,
would
that's
carry
the
it
next
through.
phase, okay.
This just gets down to Armstrong
That was a
Drive.
little more challenging, goes down, cuts across. This one was somewhat simple to do, we already do all the sewer and all the laterals. The water, it allows us to loop the water now, but we just thought, well, might as well do 5 and 7 at the same time.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, let's move to the next. Yes?
Are we asking for any exceptions on frontages? It looks like, does lot 48 have a smaller frontage?
I believe all the frontages in this zone meet the
I can't read that, what does it
In
say?
this-
It's
in
the
this-
2 combined,
phase, meet the
it's the 30 whatever and the whatever, what are those add up to?
33 and
That's 67.
67.
Should be.
So we're, well, it's
Should be
twice
like
some,
34 and 67.61, so you are 100.1.
100.1.
I mean, it's like,
It fits.
So there's a couple exceptions, because most of them are just under
Are you looking at the back of the line, the back line or the front line?
the front line.
they're all 100.
Are they all 100?
Yes. all these lots are
Well,
at
Is
least
lot
100.
47, it says 84.95, am I reading that wrong?
Well, it's 84 plus 8.4.
Plus the curve.
Plus the lot.
So the 84 takes you right here to where the curve begins.
Mhm.
And so typically what we do is we take the distance around the curve and we split that
Okay,
that
The
frontage.
lot's that wide, it's just, the distance only goes on straight lines or a
okay,
curve table.
gotcha, because the back's the 100.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Curve table's up top.
if there are no more, there, amendment to preliminary plat for number 6 for Elk Ridge Meadows phases 5 through 10. It's a little more involved, but not a great deal.
Talk fast, Shane.
Okay, just simply put, so you're gonna see this in two pieces tonight. We're talking about the amendment to the preliminary plat, and then we're gonna talk about the development agreement. The amendment to the preliminary plat, so we had a preliminary or original conceptual drawing that was approved, and the phasing on this has changed. That's the first item that you're looking at. Originally, there were 10 phases, now there will be 11 phases. All of Elk Ridge Drive is being completed as phase 7, where in the previous plat, half of it would have been completed in phase 7, the other half in phase 8. And then this phase 8 that's down here has actually been set up so that one of the issues that we've run into as we've been thinking about this is it's real easy to complete Elk Ridge Drive, but the transition onto 1600 West and tying that in, and then the future development up here is a little bit tougher. And so what needs to happen is Elk Ridge Drive needs to be completed up on top, and then what that allows to occur is with phase 8, when that's constructed, these transitions will be put into place. So this transition down here, and it can be done in such a fashion that we're not closing the whole road off at once. Traffic can be directed going one direction, to make the transition while it's going the other direction. There'll be short times during paving and short periods where it'll be closed off, but not for a long period of time. Where if we tried to do that as part of phase 7 and tie all that in, it's a little harder. So anyway, that's the phasing. The other piece of this is Silver Wolf Drive in the original conceptual plat connected straight onto Goose Nest. As you know, there's a really steep section right through here. By tying that in here and creating the intersection here at Cottontail Lane, that steep section is no longer in the road. And the other nice thing is it's going through lots instead of the houses being perpendicular with the slope. The houses are sitting parallel to it. So basically the houses act as a retaining wall, and so you can make up that difference in the slope. It's easier to handle the drainage around those houses than it is to handle 8 or 10 feet of drop between two lots right at in a 16-foot long area, which is what your setbacks are on the sides. And finally, the last piece of that puzzle is that the neighborhood park, we've discussed a payment that would go into the other parks. As part of the neighborhood park, there'd be 10 additional lots that are basically created. Well, it's with that and with this realignment of the road that there's 10 additional lots. So it goes from 87 to 97 lots. So those are the 3 items that are being approved in this amendment of the preliminary plan.
Discussion, questions?
So this is just really nitpicky, but Cottontail Lane turns into Quaking Aspen Street. I think for emergency services and people to get around, have we considered changing Quaking Aspen Street to Cottontail? So it's just,
It's the whole thing.
it's the whole street and not, it's the name of the street, depending on which side of east or west of.
How does that work, Shane? I'm great with that.
Just a
I'm wondering
suggestion.
though, if you've got a cottontail that's kind of running north and south and sometimes that's a
Or does
little,
Cottontail get changed to Quaking Aspen?
What?
Does Cottontail get changed to Quaking Aspen?
It could go either way.
Either way, it doesn't-
Cottontail's built with the school.
It doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying, I think
does
for.
that, I guess my question, does that Seth's not.
You know, we'd have to ask Seth. This is just a typical situation is that what you try to do is your north-south streets are named differently than east-west running streets. And granted, here's one of those weird exceptions right
Close
there.
addresses that way.
But, because your addressing also changes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a unique area in the city. We ran into this actually just right down in here, and all through this area with the addressing. Our north-south addressing and our east-west addressing are almost the same. It's just because of the way it fits in the quadrant of the city. They both come in right close to each other. And so we've tried to be really careful with those numbers and making sure that we don't match numbers anywhere close by in the other direction so that it isn't confusing to.
The good part, there's no houses on this, on that first
Well,
section. The only houses are gonna be as it changes to north-south.
Right,
so-
if Fairfield
Yeah,
was
that's-
small,
we
it's
don't
gonna be
need
to
to
the
think
school, not to the house.
Yeah.
Right.
There will be with Harrison Heights, there are houses right here.
Right there, but
That was-
Isn't there 2 or 3?
Probably 3.
I think there's 3 right there.
If we want to ask
So
Seth
those are-
Wade, that was just a little question I had,
Yeah.
is if we want to make those, since it's a continuous
We can
road,
certainly-
make it the same name.
let me illustrate a practical application of a similar situation we already have in the city where this has occurred. Where you live on Canyon View, used to be. Well, yours was Canyon View on your end, but it was Salem Hills Drive all the way up. But because of the change, because of the way that it flows, that whole road became Canyon View, and the portion of the road that I live on has remained Salem Hills Drive. You know, I would say from the responder point of view, I mean, from my own point of view, because usually I'm the guide, because I'm the only one that knows where the roads are, I'm the one giving directions. I don't think that it would be a real issue. I really don't. Because you've got this side of the road versus the other side. And that actually, the shorter the road, the easier it is to find something with a name. I mean, if somebody says Elk Ridge Drive, I gotta figure out whether it's on the north end or the south end or what points in between. Now, someone says Salem Hill Circle, you know, it's,
That's what you know, but the
You can
east-west,
get
when it
figured out
transitions
pretty
over, now
easy.
they're east. Now Cottontail is an east-west,
yeah.
and there's a west, I guess it'd be.
And those would all be
there,
north-south
North-south.
addresses.
And they,
Except for coming
there
across.
would only be 3 residential addresses on that section. Everything else on the right side would be City Park, on the west side is going to be the school.
And like I said, I'm okay with what, it doesn't matter to me, but.
Just a thought.
Okay, any other discussion? Let's move to number 8, or 7, excuse me.
Oh, hold on, I had one question on that, Dean. Are the trail and crossing sidewalks going to be developed with phase 7, just for safety when that roundabout gets created?
No, I think well, that's in the develop, you're gonna hear about that in a second. The development agreement's gonna go through all the timing and everything.
Okay.
Number 7 then, the development agreement is much more
Yeah, it'll go through.
involved. But before we even start on that, I would like to compliment Shay for the amount of time, thought, expertise that he put into this to try and make this thing work. Shay?
Hopefully everybody's had a little bit of time. We tried to get this out early so everybody could look through it because it has turned into kind of a complex beast in and of itself, but I think in the end it's turned out pretty well. I'm just going to go down through and just hit some major points just really quickly with it. I'm not trying to hit everything. I'd like to say hopefully you've had some time to look at it, and then if you have any specific questions, we can talk about those. But the real purpose of this development agreement started out with this whole issue of how we could possibly transfer that neighborhood park, transfer the cost of constructing that neighborhood park into our other parks. Because as a city, we've realized that by adding that neighborhood park in, we're adding additional cost. We've also realized that the situation has changed from when Elk Ridge Meadows phases 5 through 10 was originally approved. When it was originally approved, the phase 2 park was still part of an HOA, so technically it was a private park. The city has now taken that over and ended up taking it over all the open space. So now we've got 13 plus acres that the city is now having to maintain, and that is a city park, that's right, for all intents and purposes, right next to us, within walkable distance of this development. And so, by moving that neighborhood park out, we can put those amenities in phase 2, in the park up here, in other locations, and spend that money on, instead of more grass, spend it on things like splash pads, pavilions, and nice amenities that people would like to have. So that's where this started out. As part of that, obviously, we take the park out of there, then we have this open space in there that the city would grant additional lots on here. I'd like to make one point with that. These 10 lots that the city's getting, we now receive impact fees for those 10 lots, above and beyond the 87, but the roads and the sewer and the water lines were already going to be in place around the park. And so we were having to maintain those, but we weren't having people paying for water and sewer fronting those roads. And so there's additional revenue that the city is bringing in by granting those 10 lots in an area that's already, it's basically infill. It's a great example of infill. Okay, so some of the other things that we ran into as we were researching this, one that has been discussed a lot with staff is in the original development agreement, the 2005 annexation development agreement for Elk Ridge Meadows. Nilsen may remember this because it's come up since then at different times. I don't know if you were originally there at 2005, but anyway, one of the things that the city had to do was build a new water tank and a new water line to be able to serve this and other growth in the community. And so there was that was going to cost a large amount of money to pay for that. The city didn't have the money, and so they worked something out with the developer where with each phase, the developer would pay a certain amount of money towards that tank and that water line. And the idea was that was going to help pay for the bonds so the city could afford to make the bond payments. Well, the first 2 phases were built, the project went bankrupt. It sat from 2006 till 2010, and the city was still having to pay the bonds, but there wasn't any money coming in. And so the city found other ways to make that payment, and the city makes that payment, as I don't know what it is, quarterly or whatever, it's made on a regular basis, and that's all being handled without the concern with these bonds. So what happens is the developer comes in with each one of his phases, he pays a portion of this. With these, it's roughly $30,000 with each phase. He pays it to the city, and then the city holds on to it and turns around and pays it back when as building permits come in. That money never goes to pay the bonds anymore. And we've just realized for the cities, it's extra administrative effort. It doesn't need to be made. And so one of the items that's in here is to eliminate that payment up front and then the reimbursement mechanism with the building permits. Other items with this, one of the things that was talked about was adding landscape islands in Elk Ridge Drive. And so the city is going to landscape those at a future time, but the developer has agreed to put the curb wall in and then also pipe sleeves underneath the road, so that the time that it's landscaped, the city doesn't have to go in and dig the road up to get water and if power's needed or whatever, to get the utilities out for that. The other thing that was covered in this is there's a pressure reducing valve station that once this water system comes up here and it's looped now, so right now all the water down below basically comes through a pressure reducing station in Burke Lane, and then it follows around and comes across along Skyhawk and up. Once that's tied in, we need to have a new pressure reducing station here to maintain what we call 2 different pressure zones. And so the city is paying for $20,000 of that, and then the developer, which is roughly half of it, and the developer's paying the other half. Now that money has been budgeted for this year. It's impact fee eligible money, and so that's included in here. The other mechanism that's in here is just explaining how the $150,000 that Salisbury is paying with the Horizon View Farms towards the roundabout, that's paid into the city, and that was explained in his development agreement, how it was paid into the city, and then how it's being reimbursed to this developer. That mechanism is explained in here. So those are the main points of this development agreement.
Okay, question. This original 2005 development agreement started with 122 acres.
Correct.
With the current plan, how it's setting, and all the developments that are proposed, how many unit houses do we have in those 122 acres?
Let's see,
There's 50 in phase 1,
let's see, 50 in phase 1,
There's
there's
80
80, so,
in phase 2,
yeah.
this will have
This
97,
would be 97.
and
Grab my calculator. And then Horizon View Farms has 36.
36.
So 50, 80, 97, 36. Is there one more?
166,
What is that,
So you're
313?
263, I think.
Am I missing a number? 50, 80, 97, 36? 265?
I've got 263, but
Because I can't add 6 plus 7. Okay. So we've got 263 houses. The original agreement said there could be 3.63 houses per acre.
correct.
It also required 25% of open space. So 122 acres, 25% is required to be open space. Which leaves us with, well, that's 30.5 acres of open space. So we are left,
91.5 acres for
91.
houses, but the
But the density's
yeah, and I will say this, that density is based on the overall acreage, the 122 acres, and the idea was with the PUD is that they go down to the 7,000 square foot lot. So instead of being, that's all zoned R1 12,000, so 12,000 square foot lots, but with the
but
PUD.
that's not what the agreement says. That is not what the agreement says.
Well, that's what the code says, and that's how that was calculated. So all I'm saying is that the density, if you take the 122 acres, and you take that, what was it, 3.336, was it?
I mean, it's 250 versus 263. It's not a big deal. My question is, where's the 30.5 acres of open space? We have 13 acres of a park. We have another 2 acres that want to trade away. That's 15 acres. Where's the other 15 acres?
You see that really big
That's-
piece of open ground right there, that's the school?
The
If
school
you
was counted
reference
as
a
open
later
space.
amendment to that
Amendment
agreement,
number 2 or 3.
that was addressed, and the city made some additional concessions at the time that was done to get a school here in our community.
Okay,
So
so the
that's where
school
the actual-
property is considered open space.
Yes, correct.
And how much does the school have?
about 14, 15 acres.
14,
Yeah,
15 acres,
14 or
I forgot.
15 acres. I mean, it's a
Okay.
sizable area.
Plus, we actually have, the other piece of this puzzle is this becomes open space right here, dedicated to the city, or hopefully the school takes this over. And this up here is counted in the open space, and actually the area along the trail is counted as part of the open space. So we're actually
I think we're above.
quite a ways above the total number.
Okay, just checking. So, I have another thing though regarding the water.
Where does the school sit?
Good, were those?
So,
The school's in this, they've purchased this property right here. They're talking about putting the building down by Skyhawk Way and using this as fields, at least that's the plan that they've put forward, but that may change.
while she's looking for that, I'll update real quick. Met with the school district just this past week. We will not get in on the current bonding. The next bonding won't be till 2018, 2019. And if we were to receive funding for this elementary, we're 3 years in the plan design and 2 years plan design and 3 years build, so we're looking at probably close to 10 years out before that school could be completed up here. That's not definite ever. That's the best information and most current that I have.
For the meantime, it'll be a field of sunflowers.
Open space.
Pictures.
Okay, so on the city's obligation regarding the $700,000 water tank and development. Okay, help me understand this. The developer was gonna pay $700,000 to the city in phases,
Correct.
so the city could build a new water tank and a well, is what the
So
agreement
water-
calls for.
Yeah, it'd end up being a water tank and a water line.
That's what I was gonna ask, so we put in the water tank and not a well, we put in a water line, water tank and water line. But in here it says, the developer will be reimbursed for their contribution amounts less developer's pro rata share of the cost for that portion of the water system improvements utilized by the property.
Well, that's because they upfronted the costs on the tank. So-
Right, but
so
they
instead
shouldn't
of
get the
paying-
whole $700,000 back, because they need to pay for their share of the water system
Correct.
improvements used
Right.
by all that property that they're developing.
Basically, they fronted us the impact fees,
Mhm.
and then as the impact fees come in, that money goes back to the developer.
Okay, but not all of it should go back.
Well,
How
why
much
not?
has gone back? Because it says minus their pro rata share for the improvements for that property. That's what the contract says. So I'm asking, how much has been paid back to the developers? And what's their share?
So I can't specifically answer that, because I will say this, as Royce has tried to dig through and understand this, because from what we can tell in the earlier phases, the payments weren't made.
And the only person that can really tell us is no longer with us.
So, how much money did the city actually receive of that $700,000?
About 37 or something, 30.
Well, no, they upfronted money on the.
Well, phase one and
tank.
phase two,
It was a big check.
they put in.
It was
It splits up-
$233,000 per phase is what
Correct,
was required.
correct. And what happened with this phase is, so this was the remainder, so there were those first two phases at 233,000.
So both
And
of
the
those were paid?
the remainder was part of this phase. However, when the school property was sold, is that large chunk, they paid 156,000, or was it 180,000?
I'm
We'd have
not
to
sure
look,
which
it's
phase
in
they
the,
did,
it's
but
in
they did.
It's in the I wish I had the agreement right in
It's
front of me, but
47
it's-
pages long, so I'd be looking for a while. but-
It's, so the school paid another I think it was 156,000 if I remember right. Oh, was it 180?
Yeah.
Okay, so 180 was subtracted off of the remainder of that, or had been paid out. And see, nothing's being reimbursed on that.
Well, so how much did the city actually receive? We don't know? Or did they receive the two
Well,
payments of $233?
they received the 233,
So we're-
that's what I'm saying. They received the 230, the city received the 233, the city received the 180 from the city, or from the school. Dean has paid, was it 30 something for phase 5?
Phase 5.
Yeah, but wasn't mine 180, so we're not getting those backwards, are we? Because I think my total was 180, so that's where the 180, I think the schools was less,
The other one was-
Yeah, that's right. Yours would be one.
Okay.
whatever the difference in that two was for the whole.
Okay, so have we reimbursed any of this? Or this is all money that stayed in the city to build that water tank and the well line? and the water money.
Well, what we're saying is that we don't know if phase one and phase two were reimbursed. There's, unfortunately,
We don't know if they were reimbursed, but we know that they paid the money up.
they did pay the money, we know
So
that.
we're
but
we're
we
talking
don't know.
about the phases, Salisbury, and the other side where rural housing
Phase
is
one,
done a
phase
lot of
two.
that. That portion, that was paid, and then as Dean has come in, he's paid his portion. What we're doing now is, rather than creating an accounting nightmare, we're just gonna collect the money in impact fees, and it's gonna
And
go.
be done with it.
And be done with it, so that we're not, he's not coming in and writing us a check for $200,000.
I understand that part. How does the city lose $500,000 and have no idea what happened to it?
Not five.
Ask Jan.
$466,000 for phase one and two, plus we say we've got $180,000 plus another $35,000.
And the total was 7?
Total was 7. And we say
The
we have
money-
no idea
The money
if that
went,
money has been reimbursed or not?
the money went to the water tank. And then as we collected the money back from the developers, and at the time, you're only talking like 4 or 5 houses, because you have the model home, then people that are down, I think Bear Hollow Way, I think that's the road that runs parallel to the canal on the north end, just a few houses, that was basically it.
So Brittany,
Before this all went belly up.
I think the answer, I mean, the money was all collected. Phase one
The
paid,
city.
what they're saying is that because the developer went bankrupt, they didn't pay it back to the new person who bought the lots,
Yeah.
and the other person hasn't claimed it, I don't even know where to send it, that there's still money sitting there that may have rights to go back to some
That-
developer that's not around anymore.
Okay, so Dean, you hit it on the head. We should have $700,000. Where is it?
No,
That's
it's
what
in
I
the
want to
tank.
know.
It's in the tank.
So how much was the tank?
The
How much
tank's
was the
here.
tank?
700, what is it?
How much was the tank?
A million?
Oh, the tank was $1.5 million, but.
Million and a half.
But
We haven't lost any
Because
money.
we increased the size, ran additional water lines, upgraded the well, built buildings to house our pumps and everything. I mean, it was a big
So that's
project.
it, that's where that, if I understand that right then, from what you're saying, that's where the share comes in. These amounts are the share, because the share is the difference. This is their portion of it, the $750,000 is their portion of the $1.5 million. Does that make sense? If the original project was $1.5 million, the Elk Ridge Meadows was required to pay $750,000 of it.
Okay, but we're saying we have no idea if we did any reimbursements.
Well, no, there was reimbursement to the initial few homes that were built. And then when
That's it.
Salisbury came in, he did what Dean has done, and that is he came in, and as the homes were built, they paid an impact fee into the city.
I think
And that
the
money
other,
went to
the other
make our
thing that
money.
needs to be thrown in there is the original bank that it went, that the bankruptcy was involved with, became insolvent and it was dissolved. And so then it went through, I don't know who ended up with it
Yeah,
as
it went to the
FDIC, and so then,
Salisbury and Dean.
They just
Okay.
worked out the stuff.
so that was
So
all,
these
that
are-
was actually all settled with the FDIC and,
Okay, so these additional 260 homes though are paying their normal water impact fee,
correct.
correct? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. That answered that part of it.
If you want any.
Okay,
I've got some, okay.
$1,653 now.
we've got just one more. Elk Ridge Meadows Phase 7 final plat approval.
Unless you have some specific questions, I'm just gonna leave this up, because this is, So phase 7 is all along Elk Ridge Drive, and it includes 23 lots with 4 here along Goose Nest, and then the construction is Cedar Wolf Road to tie into phase 6 and complete that, so there's 23 lots along that. The Elk Ridge Drive, you were asking about the trail. The trail is, look at that development agreement again. The trail will actually be completed as part of phase 10. And the intersections have to, you know, you've got sidewalk coming out to the intersections, that has to be completed, tied in with phase 7, but then the trail will tie into those sidewalks in the intersections. And part of the reason for that, pushing the trail off to phase 10, because of this 10% grade that's in here, or actually it's steeper than that, the actual ground, there is a lot of fill material that has to come in here to make that work. And so one of our concerns was that we didn't want, we've got two things that we have to meet here. We have to address ADA. And ADA, obviously, if the road's at 10%, the trail is going to be at 10%, but it can't be any steeper than that. Is basically what ADA requires. And so what we want to be able to do, and our other concern was we didn't want the fill encroaching in the homes on the home sites. Because basically, if we're filling down in there, that means all our drainage is running off into their yards. And so what we had talked with Dean about with this is he'll construct the road with phase 7, and then once that's done, he'll then take fill material, and a lot of that fill material will actually come off these other phases and place in there, and we'll actually kind of walk the trail and grade it after that's constructed, so that we can try to make it so that we don't slope into the neighboring lots. So what you're seeing here, you know, where things are kind of zigzagging in and out, it may zigzag in and out differently than what you're seeing here, based on how the grades work off of that. And so that, by pushing it back a little bit, it allows him to bring more fill material off the site and utilize what's there for it, but then it also allows us to be able to adjust that and modify it so we can still meet the ADA requirements, but we can try to minimize those issues with drainage on the adjacent lots.
Dale?
And I think that is a good plan, because you don't necessarily need the trail to be at road level all through there. It could be higher or lower.
We can
at
drop it
different
down and
places there. And
We
so I
talked
think
about
that
some bounding too, to give some
Yeah.
relief and.
little personality to it. I think it'll work out well that way.
I had a question about the roundabout.
Or not like that.
On the roundabout,
Slow down with that
the
down.
The diagram shows that it narrows coming into the roundabout. How narrow are we going? And my concern is over ambulance and school buses being able to get through that roundabout. Because we show our road here and then we narrow in.
This is actually a design that has come from years and years of study by the Federal Department of Transportation. And this is one of their recommended best practices now with these roundabouts. And
To
so
slow traffic.
it helps to slow traffic. It also, the other thing that happens in that roundabout is at each of these locations where it narrows in, that's also where your bike paths come up onto the sidewalk, so that you don't have bikes inside the roundabout. That's a major issue. In fact, I have a friend who had both his legs broken on his bike because he was trying to go around the roundabout as cars were in the pavement, and needless to say, it's just not a good combination. And so that transition allows them to get the bikes on the sidewalk around the roundabout and then get them back off in the bike lanes as part of that. Now,
Point out the double circle, too. The secondary circle and the double circle is actually, that's your place where it's a little bit of a raised curve that trucks and fire
It's a
vehicles.
mountable curve.
Exactly.
So we're doing a mountable curb, but my question still hasn't been
so,
answered.
well, that's what I'm trying to get to now.
That other information's helpful, but I still want to know how narrow we're going.
You can't. No.
Go ahead.
One of
That's
the
the
things
issue.
that, when I met with the Cedar Hills city engineer, he indicated the only accident that they had in their major roundabout, the one over there by right next to the school, and it's right next to the Walmart here, so it was on bicycles, so that is a concern. They had no car accidents on it, but there was a bicycle accident or two.
So our engineer, I mean, I think it went to 3 different engineers, I mean, to get this entire,
Yeah.
this is like the best from the experts in roundabouts is what Shay, I think you contracted out to another sourcing
Yes, I
besides your
did.
firm. So not just our firm that we use, but not just Aqua Engineering, even a third party who even specializes even more in roundabouts, that's where,
We had a specific, Hell's Engineering that specifically, all they do is transportation engineering and traffic engineering. They've done some of the larger, busier roundabouts around the state.
Yeah, this is just
Part of their
included
design
as part of phase 7, but there's no,
Yeah,
Numbers on
I'm
it,
just
so.
trying to bring this up here so we can see if, I believe there's dimensions on this right here.
It's a paint by number, actually.
Thing of beauty.
and then, Dean, I was gonna ask you too, the sheet index says there's an erosion control plan and a revegetation retention plan. Both those are missing from this packet. Do we have those?
Yeah, we left out quite a few drawings out of these packets because it wouldn't email to you, so we sent, I believe there was a notation on the email that if you wanted the full packet, you could come into the city and get it.
Well, it's kind of hard to vote on something if we don't have,
Then
I mean,
you
you
should have
wanna
come into the
vote
city
on-
to see it.
Yeah. And actually, there is. in
well, it
that
said if we
corner.
wanted it, we could have it printed. And I did ask for things printed, but it didn't say that there was stuff missing.
I'm showing the
And
scale on here.
for the record, I have nothing to do with that.
60 feet on a 24 by 36. So I-
Whoa.
Anyways, erosion is a big issue
What
up
is
here,
that? I have to
so.
build that? I'm not building that. What is that? Shay, what have you gotten me into?
I got you into.
You're the mayor was praising you, I don't know.
Dean, you're one of the few in here that could understand that.
Not as much as you think, honestly.
He's got people.
I hire smarter people all the time.
But this one here. Right inside the house, right?
You'd have to-
The house is- yeah.
Just open space. So you only have to talk about it.
Looks like boundary is 56 here. From here to here.
Is that?
I think it's 56 if I'm reading the
On
chart.
the wide one?
See that whole road, it's 44 feet.
This is 56, so it's right here.
It's like we're 15 feet.
That's what I.
So a standard lane is 12 and we're 15.
At the narrowest point, each lane is 15.
That's what I measured off there.
The lane's 15 and then plus this actually is, this is the amount of section.
So if that's 15, then that's about half, about another 7 feet.
Yeah, my question was just right where it narrows through.
Actually, inside the roundabout itself, that's wider. That's 20 plus feet.
And that is gonna be
That's
the
the
inside,
colony.
that's where you would have the problem if you're gonna have one. We took our truck over to Woodland Hills and drove through their roundabout just to see what it was like. This one's a little bit bigger, I think it'll be easier to manage.
If 15 is the minimum for each lane, okay.
Can we do it? We'll come back. Okay, any other discussion on any of these elements so far discussed with the council?
So Dean, since we don't have those, can you give us a quick update on erosion control and revegetation retention, since those sheets are missing?
Shit. I mean,
He said it's your
I
fault.
sent them all to you guys. So,
They're actually on the state's
Probably,
website.
it's probably better for, I mean, we did the whole
I
plan.
can show them to you here. I've got the plans, I've got the full set of plans up on my machine right now.
They've been through TRC, they've been reviewed, right?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And I looked at them on the state's website just to see how much more information was available. That's kind of cool.
I have to honestly tell you, this phase has been beat up a lot more than probably any other phase in any development we've done. as far as review and re-review and re-review.
I keep coming back, I'm like
TRC and-
Why are you
like
doing
a
this?
beat dog.
Beat you down a little more.
Now, we discussed that we'd look at having a retention pond, or a small retention area on that open space on the east side that we, of this intersection. It was right, that will be open space, and be city space.
So this is the revegetation plan, right, an erosion control plan right here. Or this is retention, right? Revegetation and retention plan. Okay, so basically, all these areas where there's grading that's spread out beyond the road would be revegetated. However, caveat with that is if you're selling this lot to a home builder, you're not gonna revegetate right behind the lot there, because they're gonna turn right around and dig it back up, and in their building of the home and grading the lot. So the areas that we'd be concerned about revegetation are really along the Upridge Drive corridor and down along the roundabout.
So
area.
we show that there needs to be revegetation, but we're saying we're gonna leave it up to the lot owner
No.
to do?
Well, the vegetation
Well, your
portion,
code, your
yes.
code requires them to landscape. Here, let me explain, step back one step and explain this.
Okay.
So now we are, under the federal law, we now have to require what's called a SWIP. And basically what that is that's a stormwater protection plan. And so the developer, in order to develop this, has to have a SWIP. A few years ago, we wouldn't have even been talking about all of this. So the developer maintains a SWIP, and as long as he maintains a SWIP, we don't want as the city, we don't want to take any liability on that. That's all placed on the developer. So we don't, as far as, we check to see that it's in place, but we don't enforce anything beyond that, because as soon as we enforce, then we're taking liability with it, and we don't have to. It's all on the developer's end. So as long as he maintains a SWIP on this property, which basically says that he's not going to allow erosion and runoff to go onto adjacent properties. So in that, he has best management practices. One of those best management practices is revegetation. He has other options out there. But what he'll do is when he goes to sell these lots, there'll be a SWIP for the construction of each one of these lots. I think in your case, where you build the homes, you just have an overall SWIP. If somebody buys a lot and then they want to build a home, they have to file with the state, file a notice of intent, and then they have to maintain the SWIP on that property. So then they're basically saying, well, I'm not going to allow runoff or erosion to leave my property. And until the property is landscaped, they're required to maintain that SWIP. But then as soon as landscaping is in place, or they've got permanent features that will keep the runoff and erosion off their property, then they no longer have to maintain that SWIP.
So even though once it goes to a private owner who buys the house, the developer still has to maintain the SWIP until,
No,
The land is
he turns it
landscaped.
over to the private owner.
so once the private owner buys it, they're responsible.
They're responsible. Now their requirements are different than
So,
the
yeah,
developer.
so this is what I don't understand. On the chart, we have revegetation required on the front of those few lots in the middle.
Well, this is
But we're saying that we're not gonna do that because it's up to the landowner.
Well, this is what sorry, I need to go back. What I'm saying is these are the areas that would typically be revegetated. What this is showing you here is that this is area that's being disturbed, either by cut or fill, to build this road.
You got a while.
And that's the area that would typically be revegetated. I don't see a specific line going around this saying that that's what he's going to revegetate. The other thing that we have in play here is that the trail is going to be landscaped. And so at the time that they landscape the trail,
Right, that's.
that's revegetated as
I get
is
that,
the
and what I
area
was
around that.
concerned with is previous houses that have been built down there, we've had a lot of erosion problems. And you know what, they don't come back mad at the developer, they come back mad at the city. Why did you allow the developer to do this?
It's still their responsibility to landscape their yards
Right,
And to have drainage away from their home
and not
those
change
kind
what
of-
they
Sir,
have and not
I'm
move.
curious,
drain
have we had issues in phase 5 or 6 specifically?
not that I'm.
No.
Because we now review the site plan.
Every site plan.
I do the site plan review, and I have quite an extensive letter that goes out to them that basically, we're requiring that letter and a copy of the site plan to be given to the homeowner. And in the bottom of that letter, it explains, this explains generally the code. And then in the bottom of that letter, it explains their responsibility with that SWIP.
Okay, so every homeowner's
So,
getting that, so they are aware.
That's something that we've.
That's new, though,
With
that we-
phase, yeah, that's new. So that's why I was asking if we've had problems in 5 or 6, because if we have, then we need to,
And that is a result of the problems we've had down in
Yeah.
phase 1 and 2. That's why we have addressed the issues the way we're doing it now.
That, we're now subject to SWIP, where we weren't before.
yeah. And Horizon View Farms, I'll just throw this one out really quick, is part of the approval process with the developer. Because of previous problems in phase 1 and 2, and knowing that the slopes were the grades were similar, and we had the same developer on that, we actually required them as part of that approval process for the development to show us what the building paths were going to be and how the grading was going to occur between lots. And I have an additional paragraph in theirs, basically telling them that they've got to make sure if there's retaining walls needed, that they're in place as part of the construction of the home.
Okay, sounds good. Glad we've added that in there.
Okay, thank you. Real quickly, city celebration discussion. Nelson requested this. We've also talked about it in the past. We'll just make this very quickly. We're talking about maybe moving the date forward, maybe 1 week, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know that there is a, to me, what makes sense is that we look at calendars of ongoing events during that period of time. But because of some of the issues that we've had conflict with our city celebration, we want it to be a success. We're proposing that we move it ahead at least a week. Is there any other recommendation at this point beyond that?
A thought that I had, we can do this unofficially, it doesn't have to be part of the official voting that will take place. We have early voting now, but I think the majority of the voters will come in next Tuesday. We could have an informal poll as people come in as part of that process, just ask them what their thoughts are. Just get the input from the residents as they're coming in, just ask them. Have them fill out a little thing and say, okay, keep it as it is, move it a week forward, move it a week the other way, and just as another way to get that, because we're gonna have residents coming in here that we wouldn't normally have.
We could possibly, the problem we'll have with that is our poll workers are not going to be able to do that. It would have to be city staff. Depending, we could certainly put out something.
If we had just a clipboard,
But most
Yeah.
of them don't know why
Yeah,
it is
well,
a problem.
But
yeah,
we can
well,
do that.
that was just a thought I had.
We're gonna skip the 4th of July because of the tremendous amount of conflict we've had in the past. At least that was a discussion we've had in the past.
See,
My
I think it would be
recommendation
good
is
to
move
go
it-
back to the 4th.
Too many
Yeah.
It-
That's
it-
what the,
So,
that's
we'll,
why I was saying that.
we were talking about moving it forward. It's on here for, we can still look at it, but we need to consider it. Whatever we do, we'll wait till after the elections to decide how we're going to assign that out to council responsibility. And we can make that decision officially even later than tonight. Next,
That's good.
exploratory well. Royce, would you come and help us out here, please?
Yeah, when we were approving the capital facility plan, updating it, especially when we did the water, one of the main issues in the water section was redundancy. And trying to be somewhat proactive, we want to address the redundancy issue and to do an exploratory well. through research, this process is probably gonna cost about $170,000. But I think we're at a prime time when new development growth can take care of this. Currently, since July 1st, we have issued 30 building permits, and we do collect about a little over $5,600 in water impact fees. So I think, and then plus, we ended last year with about 92,000 in impact fees that are eligible for this, and this complete process would be eligible through impact fee, we could use them. The proposed site, after we've spent a lot of time with Craig and other people, and we've talked about high, and we've talked about, and the mayor can give the specific location, but I think through discussion, the better place for the exploratory well, since it does cost $170,000, is to go to the lower place where we own the land. And power would not be an issue, because if we go high, the cost of running power, purchasing land, definitely increase the cost from $170,000. And Cody, not being here tonight,
He's sick, we'll excuse him.
but as we're watching, especially this year, the load on our current well and the expense that we are incurring with the current well, that we just see the need that we need redundancy. And again, trying to be proactive. And I think if we deal with this now, and then in the next few years, as growth continues and we collect this money, we can definitely create a chunk of money that will go towards that kind of thrown out number of the $1 million to drill the well. So we're not bonding for such a big amount of money. Anything else, Mayor?
I think you've covered it fairly well. There's 2 or 3 sites we've looked at, and the research has indicated that we are within the same water aquifer. If we take this test well and we would drill it on the northwest corner of the soccer field park in phase 2. The other options that we've heard about, we've talked about, we've investigated would be to go back up Loafer Canyon and maybe even expand that well itself. But to do that would require us to bring in 3-phase power, and that would be very expensive to run it as far as we would have to run it. It would be nice once it was in, because from there on it's mostly downhill, and that would be great. Either way, we have to pump it up out of the ground, whether we're starting up high or down low. We will still have to pump from down low up to the tanks. And part of that whole system will also be a dedicated pump line as opposed to a distribution line, which will make it more effective in the long run. One of the biggest problems we've got is we have to decide what are we going to do for redundancy if we're going to spend $150,000, $160,000, $170,000. Are we willing then to also commit to that well down the road? There's no reason to put $170,000 in a hole and not add on the additional dollars that's going to take to finally put that well into actual production. And it won't be cheap. The farther out we go, probably the more expensive it will be. Inflation will take its toll in those situations. This past summer, the Cloward well has been running just about 24/7 during the summer. And we've started to back off a little bit as fall has hit, and when we've had our wet spring, it was backed off a bit. So we're down to those kinds of options. You had a question, Brittany.
Yeah, I know we've discussed the upfront costs, $170,000 to drill on the lower well.
That's an exploratory, just
Right,
to see
yeah,
what's there.
yeah, to
make
see
sure
what's there.
it's clear.
Yeah, sorry, I
No,
didn't
that's
clear
okay.
out the exploratory well. It's more expensive to drill an exploratory well at the top of Elk Ridge. But if we drill one at the top of Elk Ridge, we don't have to have a dedicated pumping line, and we don't have to have those electrical costs to pump that every single day of the year for the rest of the life of the well.
We'll
So
still-
why the upfront costs are cheaper? Have we looked at those numbers and what they are?
Yes.
So what are
Yes.
they?
And maybe Shay can kind of help us a little bit here.
Craig would be our better one.
Better
Yeah, I actually
Okay.
unfortunately don't know those numbers off the top of my head.
The biggest cost that we would bear would be running the electrical lines to it, because it's three-phase, and, you know, Paul back there nodding his head, I mean, we're talking, it could probably cost us as much to run the power as it would to drill the well.
Correct.
Honestly, because our code requires that it all be buried lines, which brings the cost up more. I mean, there are a number of factors that play into it. There's a reason why the well we have up there is not three-phase, because of the additional cost.
So we've got an extra $170,000 to put the power in. How much does it cost every year to pump, if we're pumping water up to a holding tank?
It's not the 170,000,
It's
it's
a billion,
1.5
you
million. The actual, once you've drilled your exploratory well, then you'll go in and you'll drill a larger well and then you outfit that with pumps.
Right, but that has to be done on either well. Either well, you have to go in once you have your exploratory well and
Correct,
put your
yes.
regular
Yeah,
well
and-
with
and
pumps.
if I understand
So
what
whether
Nelson
we
is
put
saying, it's
$1.5 million in a well up top or $1.5 million in a well below, it's the same. What I'm asking is the ongoing cost.
and I think what Nelson is saying to you, if I get this correct, is it's gonna cost you 1.5 million additional to get three-phase power up to,
That's just
Well.
up front. So either you gotta save, which if we were in a position, which we're not, to say, well, let's just save $1.5 million, because our capital facilities plan, and based on our growth, the reason we have the capital facilities plan in place is it tells us when, based on growth, we have to do certain things in order to provide water, so that we don't end up like it was when you were growing up here, where, sorry, no water today, unless you live in the lowest part of town, and then you get water. So those are things that we have to consider.
But, okay, but we have all this future hillside residential. So once that's developed, how far would we have to pull power from? Because I understand pulling power from where we're at right now, but when we're,
Well, that's
when
another well
this
down
is,
the road.
when this is built out, how far would we have to pull power from?
And I think Nelson's right, plus that'll include one more
We're
well.
gonna have to, when this is all built, we're drilling a well here for this part. We're gonna have to drill a well up here for this part eventually.
And two issues going high, as we've discussed high, is we have to go deeper, and our risk of not hitting very good up there is a lot. Down here, we're pretty certain we're gonna hit, and we're gonna hit pretty good volumes. Down here.
It's a.
But up here, we're taking a lot bigger gamble, plus all the additional expense.
But do we have those actual numbers so we can look at and say, here is the timeline it would take to recover costs of upfront if we're gonna build the well up top versus,
Thank you.
there were costs put together.
In the capital facilities plan, we went over all of those numbers.
It's there in the capital
It
facilities.
it is
plan.
there, and it was quite a bit higher. So you have, I mean, that's a part of that cost, but it's a matter of just putting facilities in place where we can at this point, and then as we grow, we'll reach out. I mean, we drill this well down here, if we hit water at 1,000 feet, we gotta go another 1,000, because when they enclose that canal, there'll be a whole lot less water in that ground. So we wanna be as deep as we can go, and as deep as we can afford to go with that.
but that's another issue of maybe why we should drill up above instead of down below.
Well, we're gonna have to anyway.
The risk is significantly greater of not getting the water. If we get it, that would be marvelous. If we wait until this develops, that's another, it's too hard to foresee that future of the development up here on the hillside. That's really kind of a shot in the dark. It could happen, it was proposed to have happened a long time ago, and there was a reason people pulled out of it, because of the incredible cost to develop up there. There's a lot of issues going on with that. Some good questions, but any other questions, discussion on that issue? Real quickly then, Utah County Every Ridge Alert System. We were under the impression that we had a 3-year contract with Parlont for our notification system. They have sold, since we signed, Parlont sold to Cloud Services, and now they're Blackboard. And so right now our contract was up as of September 29th. Our cost per year was over $1,100 for Parlont. The Everbridge system that the county has contracted with, and most cities in the county are on that system. Our cost per annual, it's gonna be a little higher this first year because we had to wait to sign up because we thought we had that contract. We waited to hear. We tried to get information. So we'll have to pay $536 twice this year. For the remainder of this year, which goes to July, and then we'll have to do it to March, excuse me. Anyway, and then we'll have to do another $536. After this first $1,072, $1,072, it will go to $536 per year. And the coverage is far superior. It was rated #1 in all of the alert systems in the United States. And it was, the research was done by, I can't remember, it's the same company that Richard Jones works for. Can't remember. Anyway, we're recommending that we switch over and we do it quickly.
That's about half of what
Yes.
the other contract was.
Yes. So, next, real quick, number 12, and then we're gonna close our work session. Scholarship discussion. What we're asking the council is, can we move forward with a proposal to create a resolution to allow the city to collect funds by donation, not from the city coffers at all, and then there has to be, because it will be coming into the city, there has to be a budget item created, and there has to be a way to distribute those dollars. And we have to have a resolution in place to be able to do that. That's what this is about. Questions about that, please?
I think the scholarship fund is a great idea. My question is, how much of an administrative burden is it going to be on our current staff?
And that's a good question.
Who's gonna award the scholarship, who's gonna?
At this point, the proposal has been, and I spoke with Curtis to get the information on how to structure this, and what we would do is we would have 3 citizens and 2 elected officials on the committee that would then bring forth to the council for approval the parameters on which we would collect, who would be the recipients, what it would take to become eligible, and the chair of that committee would be a resident, not a council or an elected official. And all of that would be brought together, hopefully within the next couple of months, so we could begin collecting the funds. It was suggested the city could put seed money into it, and I said, no, we won't do that, I'll put the first seed money in myself.
And I think that there are a number of people that would look at that, it was advertised well in the city, I'd be willing to put into something like that. And I think that type of administration, where you've got a committee, and that it's more of a citizen involvement.
There will be record keeping for following the donations and then the disbursements.
Yeah.
There would be a certain amount of that, and we talked about that. I don't know totally what that's gonna be, but I think it would be minimal. And if we had to, we could structure it that we could take some of the donations for administrative costs, but I'd rather not.
What if you put something in the scholarship that said they had to donate, if they win the scholarship money, they have to donate so many hours to the city to help them?
Well, that's gonna be, I believe that's gotta be up to the committee to discuss. The parameters of that, we can sure throw that into the mix with the discussion.
Just my own comments, feelings, I think it's a warm, good, touchy-feely PR type of thing. I just don't feel like it's the role of government. I mean, education costs are out of control because the federal government came in and said, we're gonna hand out grants, which then allowed for escalation of all the costs. I'm not saying that that's the case with this, but I just feel like it's not the government's role to be handing out money. I mean, we have residents within our own community that already have scholarship funds in place, that scholarships are awarded to, and I would rather see us rally behind those existing ones who are doing it on a more personal level than the city getting involved in that type of, that's my 2 cents on it. I feel like that. I mean, I've been very involved in seeking money and contributing to that particular fund, and that's the Cody Towles Scholarship. I just feel like that has a lot more meaning to it than, well, let's just badge one, brand one here, and the other cities are giving out scholarships because a lot of other cities are doing it. I just,
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we're gonna close our work session.